It was just another night at the city's most exclusive restaurant candlelight. Violins, whispered deals. At table 12 sat a man no one dared to disturb. The Mafia boss, known for silence deadlier than bullets. Then he saw it, a trembling waitress sliding a napkin across the table. One word scrawled in shaky ink: help. Before the waiter could reach her, his eyes had already locked on the truth fear in her hands, blood at her sleeve, a man watching from the bar. That single word would drag the most dangerous man in the city into a war he never expected to save her. The restaurant Bellini had stood on Madison Avenue for 43 years, serving politicians, actors, and men who preferred shadows to spotlights. Its crimson walls absorbed secrets. Its white tablecloths witnessed transactions that banks would never record. Dominic Russo sat at table 12, as he had every Thursday for the past 6 years. He was 38, with silver threading through black hair at his temples. His suit was Italian, custom-made, the kind that whispered wealth rather than shouted it. He ate alone, always. His men occupied 3 other tables close enough to respond, distant enough to maintain the illusion of solitude. He noticed everything: the tremor in a wine glass, the hesitation before a handshake, the micro-expressions that revealed lies before words could disguise them. These observations had kept him alive through 2 decades in a business where most men died young. Tonight, he noticed the waitress. Sophie Bennett had worked at Bellini for 8 months. She was competent, polite, and utterly forgettable, which made her perfect for the establishment. Dominic had seen her dozens of times but never truly looked at her until this moment. She approached his table with the wine list, but her hands shook. Not the nervous tremor of a new employee. This was fear, bone-deep and recent. Her left sleeve was pulled low, but as she reached to pour water, he glimpsed purple-yellow bruising circling her wrist like a bracelet of violence. "The Barolo, sir?" Her voice was steady, professional, but her eyes flickered toward the bar, just once, with the desperation of a drowning person searching for shore. "Please," Dominic said, his tone neutral. He was fluent in the language of violence, and this woman spoke it unwillingly. She poured with practiced precision. Then, as she set the bottle down, her hand brushed the white napkin beside his plate. When she retreated, the napkin had moved. Dominic waited until she was 3 tables away before lifting his water glass. Beneath it, the napkin bore 4 letters in shaky ballpoint pen: help. He didn't react. Reaction meant attention, and attention meant danger for her. Instead, he took a slow sip of wine, his eyes moving methodically across the restaurant's interior. The man at the bar wore a leather jacket despite the evening's warmth. He nursed a single beer, untouched for 20 minutes. His attention never wavered from Sophie as she moved between tables. When she glanced his way, her shoulders drew inward, her stride shortened. Body language didn't lie. Dominic touched his ear, activating the discreet communication device his security team wore. "Anthony." The man at the bar. Brown leather, dark hair. "Follow him when he leaves. I want his name, address, and every place he's been this week." "Understood," came the quiet reply. Dominic returned to his meal, but the food had lost its appeal. The napkin sat beside his plate, a silent accusation. In his line of work, you learned to ignore pain that wasn't your responsibility. Compassion was a luxury that men like him couldn't afford. Yet here he was, unable to look away. Sophie returned to clear his appetizer plate. Her professional mask was cracking at the edges. A red mark on her collarbone disappeared beneath her collar. Fresh, perhaps an hour old. "Miss," Dominic said quietly, his voice pitched low enough that only she could hear. "Is there a problem I should be aware of?" Terror flashed across her face, quickly suppressed. "No, sir. Everything is fine. Can I bring your entree?" "In a moment." He folded the napkin carefully, tucking it into his jacket pocket. "If something were to happen tonight hypothetically, would you prefer it to be quiet or public?" She understood immediately. Her eyes filled with tears she couldn't afford to shed in front of the man at the bar. "Quiet, sir. Please." "Then go about your work. Don't look at me again tonight. Don't go anywhere alone, even the bathroom. Stay near people." He paused. "At midnight, walk out the front entrance. A black car will be waiting. Get in." "I can't." "You already did. When you wrote that word." He gestured subtly toward his pocket. "Now you have to trust that you chose the right person to give it to." She nodded once, barely perceptible, and moved away with his plate. Dominic finished his wine, though he barely tasted it. The man at the bar had noticed their interaction. His posture had shifted from casual surveillance to active threat assessment. Dominic recognized the type muscle for hire. Probably local, definitely armed. At 11:30, Dominic settled his bill in cash, as always. He left a generous tip, as always. He nodded to the maitre d', as always. Nothing in his routine changed. Nothing to signal that tonight was different from any other Thursday. But as he stepped into the cool Manhattan night, he made a gesture to Anthony that meant, lock it down. Within minutes, his team would have the restaurant under discreet surveillance. Sophie would be protected whether she realized it or not. The man at the bar would be followed to whatever hole he crawled into. Dominic sat in the back of his Mercedes, the napkin resting on his palm. 4 letters, 1 syllable, infinite wait. He had built an empire on knowing when to act and when to wait, when to show mercy and when to demonstrate why mercy from him was a gift. He had stopped counting the bodies years ago. He had stopped feeling guilt even longer before that. But this woman had handed him her terror wrapped in 4 letters, and something dormant inside him stirred. Perhaps it was because she reminded him of Maria, the woman who had saved him when he was 17 and stupid, before he learned that survival required ruthlessness. Maria had died because he couldn't protect her. He had built his entire life ensuring he would never be that powerless again. Or perhaps it was simpler. Perhaps he was tired of being the monster people feared and wanted, just once, to be the man someone hoped for. At midnight, Sophie walked out of Restaurant Bellini. She looked left, then right, searching for the black car. It pulled up exactly on time. She hesitated on the curb, survival instinct warring with desperation. Then she saw Dominic in the back seat, window rolled down. "You don't have to get in," he said. "You can walk away right now. But if you do, I can't help you. And the man who was at the bar is waiting around the corner." Sophie looked back at the restaurant, then at the dark street ahead. She made her choice. She got in the car. The drive took 18 minutes through Manhattan's late-night arteries. Sophie sat pressed against the far door, her purse clutched in white-knuckled hands. Dominic gave her space, his attention fixed on his phone as he reviewed the information Anthony was sending. Ethan Cole, 29, 3 arrests, no convictions. Known associate of the Volkov organization, a mid-level trafficking operation that specialized in debt coercion. They found vulnerable people, usually immigrants, or those with criminal records, and trapped them in cycles of impossible debt. Perfect predator choosing perfect prey. "What's your name?" Dominic asked without looking up. "Sophie. Sophie Bennett." Her voice was hoarse, as if fear had scraped it raw. "How long has Ethan Cole been watching you, Sophie?" She jerked as if he'd struck her. "How do you—" "I know many things." "How long?" 6 months. Since February." She stared at her hands. "I met him at a coffee place near my apartment. He seemed nice, charming. He said he worked in real estate." A bitter laugh. "I believed him for almost 3 weeks." Dominic set his phone down. "What does he want from you?" "Money. Always money. He said I owed him because he'd invested in me, paid my rent 1 month when I was short, bought me things I never asked for. Then suddenly I owed him $12,000. Her voice cracked. "I work at a restaurant. I don't have $12,000. So he made you pay another way." Sophie nodded, tears streaming silently down her face. "At first it was just information. Who came to the restaurant, what they talked about. Then he wanted me to put things in people's drinks. I refused. That's when he—" She touched her wrist unconsciously. Dominic's expression remained neutral, but his hands flexed once, briefly, into fists. "How many people are involved?" "I don't know. Ethan works for someone else. I've seen 2 other men with him. One of them showed me pictures of my little sister. She's 16, lives in Philadelphia," he said. She couldn't continue. The car stopped in front of a high-rise in Tribeca, Dominic's building. 24-hour security, cameras on every floor, a level of protection that only significant wealth and influence could purchase. "You'll stay here tonight," Dominic said. "Tomorrow we'll discuss options. You can't afford. You're not paying. You asked for help. I'm providing it." He opened the door, then paused. "Sophie, look at me." She did, her eyes red and exhausted. "No one will hurt you here. That's not a promise. It's a fact. Do you understand?" She nodded slowly. They rode the elevator to the penthouse in silence. Dominic's home was minimalist, all clean lines and muted colors. Functional but impersonal, like a hotel suite for permanent residents. Guest room is down that hall, second door. Bathroom attached. There are clothes in the closet, my sister's things. You're about the same size. Help yourself. He moved to the kitchen, poured himself whiskey. Are you hungry? No. Sophie stood uncertainly in the middle of the living room, a sparrow in an eagle's nest. Why are you doing this? It was the question he'd been asking himself all night. The answer that came surprised him with its honesty. Because 20 years ago, someone helped me when they didn't have to. She died because I wasn't strong enough to protect her. I got strong afterward. He took a long drink. I can't save her. But maybe I can save you. Sophie studied him with new eyes. You're the mafia boss everyone talks about, Dominic Russo. I've heard stories. I'm sure you have. Most are probably true. He met her gaze. Does that change your mind about staying? She thought about it, really thought about it. Then she shook her head. The devil you know versus the devil who'll kill your sister. Easy choice. I'm not the devil, Sophie. I'm just practical about violence. He gestured toward the hallway. Get some sleep. We'll talk in the morning. She hesitated at the threshold. Thank you for seeing that napkin. After she left, Dominic stood at his floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the city lights. His phone buzzed. Anthony. We have Cole's location. Motel on the west side. Room 7B. He's making calls. Agitated. 3 other men just arrived. They know she's missing. Maintain surveillance. I want to know everyone he talks to, everything he does. Dominic finished his whiskey. And Anthony? Find out who owns him. Someone higher up the chain. This operation is too organized for a small-time thug. Already working on it, boss. Dominic ended the call. Through the guest room door, he heard the sound of running water. Sophie, washing away the night. Or trying to. He returned to his study, pulling the napkin from his pocket. The ink had smudged slightly where her fingers had pressed too hard, desperation making her grip unsteady. Blood had dried brown at one corner from her wrist, most likely, where the bruising indicated recent violence. 4 letters. 1 word. An entire plea for salvation compressed into the smallest possible space, written in stolen seconds while a predator watched. Dominic had ended men for less provocation than Ethan Cole had offered. Had erased entire organizations for threatening what was his. But Sophie wasn't his to protect. She was just a frightened woman who had gambled her life on the hope that a monster might have mercy. She'd been right to gamble, but not because he was merciful. Because 20 years ago, Maria had written a similar word on a piece of paper and slipped it to a bouncer at a club where Dominic's father was collecting protection money. That bouncer had ignored it. Maria had died 3 days later. Dominic folded the napkin carefully and locked it in his desk drawer. Some debts could never be repaid to their original creditor, but they could be transferred to someone else who needed them. He made one more call before bed. Marcus, I need everything on the Volkov organization. Structure, hierarchy, operations. By tomorrow afternoon. That's a tall order, Dom. I know. Charge accordingly. He hung up and stared at the closed guest room door. Behind it, a woman slept fitfully in borrowed safety. Outside, a city full of predators circled, looking for weakness. They wouldn't find it here. Not in his house. Not while she was under his protection. Dominic had been many things in his life. Soldier, strategist, killer, king of a criminal empire. But tonight, for the first time in 2 decades, he would be something simpler. Guardian. Sophie woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the smell of coffee. For a disoriented moment, panic seized her. Where was she? Then memory returned. The napkin, the car, Dominic Russo's penthouse. She'd slept in the borrowed clothes, a soft cotton shirt and loose pants that indeed fit as if they'd been made for her. The bathroom mirror revealed what she'd looked like after washing away makeup the night before. Bruises on her collarbone, her wrist, a fading mark on her jaw that foundation had concealed. Evidence of Ethan's escalating anger over the past week. In the kitchen, Dominic stood at the counter reading a tablet, dressed casually in dark jeans and a fitted black shirt. He looked younger this way, less like the formal figure from the restaurant, and more like someone who could pass for normal. Except for the gun in the shoulder holster he made no effort to hide. Coffee? He offered, gesturing to the pot. Please. Sophie poured herself a cup, grateful for something to do with her shaking hands. You're up early. I don't sleep much. He set the tablet down. I've been reviewing information on Ethan Cole and his associates. It's worse than you thought. Sophie's stomach dropped. How much worse? The Volkov organization isn't just running debt schemes. They're trafficking women overseas, primarily to Eastern Europe. The debt trap is how they recruit. Get women desperate enough, compromise them legally, then present overseas work as the only escape. He watched her carefully. You would have been on a plane within 6 weeks. The coffee cup rattled against the counter as Sophie set it down. Oh God, I thought. I thought he just wanted money, or information, or he wanted leverage. Everything he did was designed to isolate you, make you dependent, eliminate your options. Dominic's voice was matter-of-fact, clinical. It's a proven strategy. Volkov has moved over 300 women in the past 5 years. Sophie felt her knees weaken. She sat heavily at the kitchen island. My sister. Ethan showed me pictures. She's safe. I had 2 of my people check on her this morning. She's at school right now, completely unaware. He poured himself more coffee. I've assigned protection to her as well. Discreet. She won't know they're there. You can do that? Just like that? I can do many things, Sophie. That's the advantage of being who I am. He leaned against the counter. Now we need to discuss what happens next. You have 3 options. She waited, hardly breathing. Option 1. I give you money and a new identity. You disappear. Start over somewhere Volkov won't find you. It's the safest choice for you, but it means leaving everything behind. Your sister, your life, everyone you know. Sophie shook her head immediately. I can't leave Natalie. She's only 16, and our parents are gone. I'm all she has. I thought you'd say that. Option 2. I provide protection while you testify against Cole and the Volkov organization. Federal prosecutors would be very interested in your information. But testimony means exposure, and Volkov has long reach. Even in witness protection, there are risks. And option 3? Dominic smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. Option 3. I handle it. Handle it, Sophie repeated slowly. You mean? I dismantle the organization that targeted you. Permanently. No trials, no testimony, no public exposure. You go back to your life as if this never happened. He set his cup down. But this option has costs you need to understand. It means violence. It means I do things you might not want to know about. And it means you'll owe me something. What would I owe you? Your silence. Whatever happens, however this ends, you never speak of it. Not to police, not to friends, not to anyone. His dark eyes held hers. Can you live with that? Sophie thought about Ethan's hands around her throat 3 days ago when she'd tried to refuse his latest demand. Thought about the pictures of Natalie leaving school, the implied threat. Thought about 300 women who'd vanished into nightmare because men like Ethan found them vulnerable. Yes, she said. I can live with that. Dominic nodded as if he'd expected this answer too. Then I need you to do exactly as I say. For the next few days, you stay here. You don't contact anyone. Don't post on any accounts. Don't even look out the windows. As far as the world knows, you've vanished. That will make Cole desperate. Desperate people are dangerous. Desperate people make mistakes. And I need him to make just one. He picked up his tablet again. My people are tracking him now. He's making calls, mobilizing Volkov resources. They're searching for you. Good. Let them search. Every call they make, every person they contact, gives me more of their organization's structure. Sophie wrapped her hands around the warm coffee cup. How long will this take? 48 hours. Maybe less. He glanced at her with something that might have been concern on a less controlled face. I know waiting is hard, but patience is how wars are won. The day passed slowly. Sophie tried to read, watch television without processing anything, paced the length of the penthouse like a caged animal. Dominic worked in his study, making quiet phone calls and reviewing documents. His men came and went, delivering reports, receiving instructions. Nobody questioned Sophie's presence. Nobody even looked surprised. That evening, while they ate takeout Chinese food in surprisingly companionable silence, Sophie asked, "Why aren't you married?" Dominic looked up from his lo mein. Curious question. You have a sister's clothes here. Family pictures in your office. But you live alone in this huge place. It seems, she searched for the right word, lonely. It is, he admitted. But people in my profession don't maintain normal relationships. It's not fair to ask someone to love a man who might die violently or get arrested at any moment. So I don't ask. The woman you mentioned. Maria, Was she? No. She was just kind to a stupid teenager who got in over his head. My father worked for her family, but in a dispute over territory, he killed her uncle. She hid me until things cooled down, probably saved my life. When her family found out, they killed her as punishment. He set down his chopsticks. I was 17, she was 19, and I learned that protection means nothing without power. So you got power. So I got power, he agreed. And now I use it to make sure people I decide to protect stay protected. The difference between me and my father is that I honor my commitments. Sophie studied him across the table. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone crueler. Someone who enjoyed others' fear. She hesitated. You don't enjoy it. You just accept it as necessary. Very perceptive. He stood, clearing plates. The cruelty comes when necessary. Don't mistake calculated restraint for kindness, Sophie. I'm helping you because I choose to. But I've hurt many people who gave me no choice. That night, Sophie lay awake in the guest room, thinking about choices and monsters and the strange safety she felt in the home of a man who killed for a living. Outside her door, Dominic Russo worked late into the night, dismantling an organization that preyed on vulnerable women. He'd said he wasn't kind. But kindness and good weren't always the same thing. Sometimes the monster was exactly who you needed. On the second morning, Dominic's phone rang at 6:15. He answered immediately, already dressed, already awake. Sophie heard his side of the conversation from the kitchen where she was attempting to make breakfast. When? How many? No, maintain distance. Let them settle in. A pause. Yes, I'll be there in an hour. He emerged from his study with focused intensity. Cole is moving. He's set up in a warehouse in Red Hook with at least 5 men. They're preparing to leave the city, probably assume you went to the police and they need to scatter. Sophie's heart hammered. What are you going to do? Stop them. He shrugged into a jacket, checked his gun with practiced efficiency. You stay here. Anthony will be right outside if you need anything. Wait. Sophie caught his arm without thinking, then immediately released it. What if something goes wrong? What if Nothing will go wrong. His certainty was absolute, unshakable. This is what I do, Sophie. Have faith. He left before she could respond. The next 4 hours were the longest of Sophie's life. She tried to distract herself with television, with cleaning, with anything that would stop her mind from imagining what was happening in that warehouse. Anthony checked on her twice, his presence both reassuring and terrifying because it meant Dominic was somewhere else, doing something dangerous. At 10:30, the penthouse door opened. Dominic entered looking exactly as he'd left, except for a small cut above his left eyebrow and spots of someone else's blood on his shirt collar. Behind him, 2 of his men carried boxes of files. It's done, he said simply. Sophie stood frozen, unsure what to ask, what she was allowed to know. Ethan? In federal custody along with 4 of his associates. Anonymous tip provided police with their location, weapons, and enough evidence to build trafficking charges that will put them away for 20 years minimum. He moved to the kitchen, poured whiskey despite the early hour. The 5th man chose to run. He won't be a problem. Sophie understood what he wasn't saying. And the Volkov organization? Currently in crisis as their financial records, client lists, and operational details are simultaneously hitting the FBI, Interpol, and several international task forces. They'll be dismantled within weeks. He took a long drink. You're safe. Your sister is safe. Cole will never touch another woman. The relief hit Sophie like a physical force. Her knees buckled. She caught herself on the counter, breathing hard, tears streaming. Thank you. God, thank you. Dominic set down his glass and moved closer, though he didn't touch her. You held up better than most people would have. That took courage. I was terrified the entire time. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's writing help on a napkin when a predator is watching. He studied her with those dark, assessing eyes. What will you do now? Sophie wiped her face. Go back to my life, I guess. Back to work, to my apartment. She trailed off, realizing how strange that sounded after everything. About work, Dominic said. The manager at Bellini called yesterday asking about you. I had Anthony tell him you had a family emergency and would be back Monday. Your job is safe. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. Eliminating threats is pointless if you can't resume your life afterward. He gestured to the boxes his men had brought. Those are Volkov's records on you. Every debt they claimed, every manufactured charge, every piece of leverage they thought they had, All fabricated. You never owed them anything. Sophie stared at the boxes, tangible proof of the lies that had trapped her. Can I burn them? Already planned to. Come on. They took the boxes to the building's rooftop. In a metal barrel meant for exactly this purpose, Dominic lit the files while Sophie watched. Papers curled and blackened, smoke rising into the clear October sky. Every false debt, every manipulated invoice, every threatening photograph transformed to ash. When the last ember died, Sophie felt lighter than she had in months. What now? She asked. Dominic leaned against the rooftop's railing, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. Now you go back to your life. You work, you save money, you visit your sister on weekends. You date someone decent who treats you well. You forget about dangerous men in expensive restaurants. And you? I go back to my life too. He smiled faintly. Though mine involves fewer normal elements. Sophie moved to stand beside him at the railing. I could make you dinner sometime, as thank you. You don't owe me anything, Sophie. I know. But maybe I want to anyway. She met his eyes. You saved my life. I'd like to know you're eating something besides takeout in that fancy penthouse. Dominic was quiet for a long moment. That's not a good idea. Why not? Because men like me don't get happy endings. We get enemies and paranoia and midnight phone calls about bodies. You should be as far from that as possible. What if I don't want to be far from it? Sophie surprised herself with the words. What if I want to know the man who noticed one word on a napkin when everyone else would have ignored it? Then you're not as smart as I thought you were. But his tone had softened. They stood in silence, watching the city wake up below them. Sophie thought about fear and safety, about the difference between a good man and a good person. Dominic Russo wasn't good in any conventional sense. But he'd fought for her when no one else would have. Had dismantled an organization because she'd asked for help. That had to count for something. Dinner, she said finally. Just dinner. No pressure, no expectations. Just two people eating food. Dominic looked at her for a long time. Then he nodded once, barely perceptible. Just dinner, he agreed. But they both knew it was a beginning. Sophie returned to her apartment that evening escorted by Anthony, who swept every room with professional thoroughness before declaring it safe. Her space looked exactly as she'd left it 3 days ago, but felt different somehow. Smaller, less secure. She'd tasted safety in Dominic's fortress of a home, and her studio apartment with its flimsy lock now felt vulnerable in comparison. Over the following week, life resumed its normal rhythm. She returned to work at Restaurant Bellini, where her colleagues accepted the family emergency explanation without question. She called Natalie and made plans to visit Philadelphia the following weekend. She even went on a date with a graphic designer she met at a coffee shop, though the evening felt hollow and she declined a second meeting. Normal life felt like a costume that no longer fit properly. Through it all, Dominic's presence lingered in subtle ways. The man who'd been watching her apartment building for the past 2 days was one of Dominic's people. Anthony had pointed him out casually, as if armed guards were standard amenities. When a drunk customer grabbed her wrist too tightly at work, the man's companion immediately pulled him away, apologizing profusely, and Sophie caught a glimpse of familiar features. Another of Dominic's men. He was keeping her safe even as he maintained distance. She texted him on Friday. Still want that dinner? His response came 3 hours later. Sunday, 7 p.m. I'll cook. Sophie stared at the message. Dominic Russo, feared Mafia boss, was offering to cook her dinner. The absurdity made her laugh out loud in the middle of the grocery store. Sunday evening, she arrived at his building in a simple blue dress, carrying a bottle of wine that probably cost less than one of his shirts. The same concierge who'd seen her 3 days ago nodded pleasantly, as if her presence was expected and unremarkable. Dominic answered his penthouse door in jeans and a gray sweater, looking almost domestic. Almost. You came, he said, sounding genuinely surprised. You invited me. Sophie handed him the wine. I brought reinforcements in case your cooking is terrible. Practical. He stepped aside to let her enter. I promise not to poison you. Bad for business. The kitchen smelled incredible garlic, herbs, something rich simmering on the stove. Dominic moved through the space with the same precise efficiency he applied to everything else, chopping vegetables with a chef's knife that looked dangerously sharp. Where did you learn to cook? Sophie asked, accepting a glass of wine. My grandmother. She believed men who couldn't feed themselves were weak. He smiled at the memory. Every Sunday she made me help with dinner. Said it taught patience and attention to detail. Skills that translate to your other work. Everything translates if you're paying attention. He slid chicken into a pan where it sizzled immediately. How was your week? Strange. Normal, but not normal. Sophie perched on a bar stool, watching him work. I keep waiting for something terrible to happen. For Ethan to appear, or for someone to grab me on the street. But nothing does. Nothing will. Ethan Cole pleaded guilty to trafficking charges 3 days ago, facing 25 years minimum. The Volkov organization has been compromised on 3 continents. Their leadership is either arrested or in hiding. You're genuinely safe now. Because of you. Because you were smart enough to ask for help. He plated food with surprising artistry. Not everyone does. They ate at his dining table, conversation flowing easier than Sophie expected. Dominic asked about her childhood, her relationship with Natalie, her plans beyond waitressing. She asked about his sister, his grandmother, the legitimate businesses he owned alongside the illegitimate ones. I have construction companies, real estate holdings, a wine import business, he explained. Profits from the legal ventures exceed the illegal ones now. In 10 years, I could walk away from the underworld completely if I wanted to. Do you want to? He considered the question seriously. Sometimes. Then something happens that reminds me why I built this empire in the first place. Someone needs protection or revenge or justice that law enforcement won't provide. And I remember that power isn't just for acquisition, it's for application. Like with me. Like with you, he agreed. After dinner, they moved to the living room. Dominic put on music classical. Surprisingly, something by Debussy that seemed at odds with his dangerous reputation. Sophie curled into the corner of his couch, wineglass in hand, feeling more relaxed than she had in months. Can I ask you something? She ventured. You've been asking me things all evening. Something more personal. She gathered courage. Why did you really help me? Beyond the debt to Maria, there had to be hundreds of people over the years who needed help. Why me? Dominic was quiet for so long, Sophie thought he wouldn't answer. Then, because you didn't assume I'd help. Most people who need something from me demand it, threaten, try to leverage. You just wrote one word and hoped. That kind of quiet desperation. He paused. It reminded me that beneath all the fear people have of me, there's sometimes a different kind of faith. The kind that believes even monsters might choose mercy. You're not a monster. I've done monstrous things, Sophie. To protect people or punish those who hurt them. That's not the same as Ethan, who hurt people for profit and pleasure. She set down her wine. You're complicated. Dangerous, yes. But not monstrous. He turned to face her fully. You should be afraid of me. I was. For about 10 minutes in your car that first night. She smiled. Then you gave me guest room and your sister's clothes and asked if I was hungry. Monsters don't do that. You have too much faith in me. Maybe you don't have enough faith in yourself. The words hung between them, honest and sharp. Dominic's expression shifted through several emotions too quick to name before settling on something that looked like resignation. If you stay in my life, Sophie, it will be complicated, dangerous sometimes. There will be nights I can't tell you where I'm going or what I'm doing. People will look at you differently if they know you're connected to me. Are you trying to scare me away? I'm trying to be honest about what this would mean. Sophie moved closer, her voice quiet but certain. You saved me. You protected my sister. You destroyed the people who wanted to hurt me. I know exactly who you are, Dominic Russo. And I'm still here. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear with surprising gentleness. You're either very brave or very foolish. Can't I be both? He laughed, the sound genuine and warm. Then he kissed her, soft and careful, as if she might break. Sophie leaned into it, her hands finding his shoulders, anchoring herself to this moment. When they parted, Dominic rested his forehead against hers. This is a terrible idea, he murmured. Probably, Sophie agreed. You could still walk away. So could you. Neither of them moved. Outside, the city glittered with a million lights, each one a life being lived in proximity to danger and hope. Inside, two people who shouldn't fit together somehow did, bound by a single word on a napkin and the choice to honor it. It wasn't a fairy tale. Dominic would never be a prince, and Sophie would never be naive enough to believe his world was safe. But it was real and honest and theirs. Sometimes that was enough. 6 months later, Sophie stood in the kitchen of her new apartment larger than her studio, in a better neighborhood, with security that Dominic had personally vetted. She was cooking pasta when her phone rang. "Hey," Dominic's voice was tight. "I need to cancel tonight. Something came up." "Business?" She kept her tone light, though worry crept in. They'd learned this dance over the past months, questions she shouldn't ask, answers he couldn't give. The complicated kind. "I'll call you when it's handled. Be safe." "Always am." A pause. "Sophie?" "Yes?" "I love you." He'd said it only twice before. Each time carried weight because Dominic didn't waste words on feelings he didn't mean absolutely. "I love you too. Come home." "I will." The call ended. Sophie returned to her pasta, knowing sleep would be impossible until she heard from him again. This was the reality of loving Dominic Russo nights spent waiting. Trust extended into darkness. Faith that the dangerous man she loved would survive whatever violence his world demanded. Her phone buzzed 2 hours later. "It's handled. Home in 30. Relief flooded through her. When Dominic arrived, he was exhausted but unharmed. He pulled her into his arms without speaking, just holding her as if she was the only stable point in his world. Sophie held him back, understanding in her bones that this man, powerful and feared and dangerous, needed her quiet strength as much as she needed his protection. "Rough night?" she asked eventually. "Rough month, but it's over." He pulled back to look at her. "I'm thinking about what we discussed, about stepping back from certain operations." "Really?" "Really. I have enough legitimate businesses now that the illegal ones feel more like habit than necessity." He brushed his thumb across her cheek. "And I have reasons to come home that matter more than territory or profit." Sophie's heart swelled. "What changed?" "You did. 6 months ago, I saved you because of an old debt. Now you're the reason I want to become someone who doesn't need saving himself." He smiled faintly. "It's inconvenient, caring about someone this much." "Extremely inconvenient," Sophie agreed, kissing him. They spent the evening on the couch, Dominic's head in her lap while she played with his hair, and they watched a movie neither paid attention to. Ordinary, domestic, perfect. The next Thursday, Dominic had business at Restaurant Bellini, a meeting with associates that required the neutral ground. Sophie was working that night. She approached his table with professional warmth that hid private affection. "Good evening, sir." "The usual?" Her eyes sparkled with shared secrets. "Please." He watched her with open appreciation now, no longer pretending distance. "And ask the manager if you can take your break soon. I'd like your company. I'll see what I can do." When she returned with his wine, she set down a fresh napkin, written in neat script. "Thank you for noticing." Dominic smiled, folding it carefully into his pocket as he had that first one 6 months ago. The difference was everything had changed, and nothing had. He was still dangerous. She was still brave. And Table 12 was still theirs, where a single word had started everything. Where a woman wrote help and a monster chose to be a man instead. Where two impossible people found each other in the space between fear and faith. It wasn't the ending either of them expected, but it was theirs. Real, complicated, and worth every risk. And sometimes, that was the best kind of ending there was.